Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, students, friends, family, welcome to episode 100
Woo!
of the Teacher Emilio podcast. Today I've got a very energetic guest. Today we will talk about becoming a pilot. Look, excuse my ignorance because now you are officially a pilot. There we go. So I have brought a pilot. We are going to talk a bit about how to, or like maybe more a bit, let's say about your experience, your journey in becoming a pilot because, well, look, in the world of aviation, I think there are so many maybe different things you can do.
Yep, definitely.
And, well, look, mini intro, guys. So, funny enough, I'm bringing everyone slowly from the study tour from Japan. So, Angela was also in the study tour. And I remember having a chat and I said one day, hey, I think you should come to the podcast because people will like to listen to you. So, Angela, thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. So my introduction now?
Yeah, tell us a bit about yourself.
So like Emilio said, my name is Angela and we met on the Japan trip probably like almost a year ago, right?
Time flies.
Yeah, time flies. I have been in the aviation industry for probably about 4 years now. I recently just completed my commercial pilot's license.
Well done, congrats.
And with the pilot pathway, you're always on a learning journey. There's always the next rating or the next certification to get. So I am still learning myself. But I'm very happy that I have now obtained my commercial license and can legally start to look for jobs as a pilot.
Amazing, Angela. Congrats, because it sounds like it's been a long journey. When I think of a pilot, I also imagine like people in the health industry, like for example, a doctor or someone who's always have to be like either studying or catching up with new technologies. Yeah. I mean, I guess my engineers out there and everyone listening is like in my industry, we do the same. And I'm like, I know, but I just get a feeling that with becoming a pilot or a doctor is maybe one of those professions that maybe take quite some time, right?
Yep, I agree. Because with aircrafts, sometimes you get updates in the system. So it's important for you to know what's going on in case something does happen in the flight.
And look, tell us, because, I mean, I've had students over the past few years who say, I want to be a pilot. And without pushing down on anyone, it reminds me of when I was a kid and I said, I want to be an astronaut. It's, I think, one of those cool jobs that we want to do. But then, maybe throughout life, I think like common jobs like that would be like becoming an astronaut or a firefighter or like researcher. At least for me, right? Let me know if you also thought of having any of those jobs. But then when you say like, I'm a pilot, it's like, wow, that's, good crazy because it's not something you expect to see that often. So can you tell us a bit about how/why you decided to become a pilot?
I get asked that question a lot, and to be honest, I still don't have the best answer to that. I feel like sometimes I'm still figuring out why or how I got here in the first place. But I would say my passion in aviation started from when I was a kid. Whenever I was at the airport, it just felt really exciting for me, and it felt like my second home almost. And growing up, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I considered becoming a flight attendant, but over time, I just figured that wasn't really for me. And I remember when I was at my tutoring place, probably about when I was almost finishing high school, and I was having a chat with my tutor, and she was telling me that she knew another girl who was studying to become a pilot. And I think because of the gender expectations and how in some industries there's a bit of an imbalance in the gender, becoming a pilot wasn't really something that I thought of. So when I heard about that story, it kind of like gave me an idea. And then that's when I began to go down that pathway.
Interesting. And this person also like female girl?
Yeah, that's correct.
And I guess, you listened to it and you said, I like a challenge and I'm going to go that uphill battle and, be one of the female pilots out there. But it's true, now that you mentioned that, you touched on a few different interesting things, but it is, let's say, not impossible, but it's more difficult, I would say, to find a female pilot. I guess maybe the same way that it may be, thinking on the opposite, on the opposite way, maybe like it's a bit more difficult to find male nurses. It's not. I'm not saying there are no male nurses before anyone clips me and I get in trouble. It's just that in terms of probability, it's like you were saying, maybe some industries are more female dominated, others ones are more male dominated.
Yeah.
Interesting. And you decided to pursue that. That must have been a challenge. And I want to get into that in a second, but you mentioned being a flight attendant.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, because again, being a bit ignorant here, could you or can anyone go from flight attendant into pilot? Because I do know that with certain, let's say skills, traits, however we want to call it, we could start, let's say, more basic. And that could be like the entry point to then make a pathway into something a bit more skilled.
Yeah, definitely. I've actually heard a lot of stories of people who were flight attendants and then they progress into a pilot pathway. And I feel like some people might have gotten the inspiration from being around those people a lot and then seeing it close to you. It makes you feel like it's something that you can achieve and do as well.
Exactly. And that was where my question came from, because I thought, maybe there is like an entry exam or something, and maybe, hypothetically speaking, maybe there is someone who cannot get in as a pilot from the very beginning, but maybe it's like, okay, you can't be a pilot, but before we crush your dream, you could become a flight attendant, give it a try for, I don't know, let's say a year or two,
Okay.
and maybe use that. Or the other way around, what you said, maybe you start as a flight attendant and you say, hey, this looks really cool. I want to, eventually become a pilot. So for any flight attendants out there you go. If you do want to eventually become a pilot, there is hope. That could be a new episode.
Yep.
And, getting into like that challenge of, becoming a female pilot, can you tell us a bit about how has your experience been?
So like I said, the gender imbalance in aviation, especially in pilot, is quite, you can see it, especially when you walk into a classroom. It's probably only about 5% girls in there, 95% guys. And personally me, for majority of the classes I've been in, I've usually been the only girl in the class. But I've been very lucky, I'd say. I have never really experienced any discrimination regarding my gender.
Oh, good.
I'm not sure if it's the same in other areas, but personally, I didn't experience any of those discriminations. So I'm very lucky. And majority of the time, the guys in my class, they're all very friendly and they never really saw me as anything different to them. I feel like if anyone was to judge someone else, it would be more on your skill or your knowledge.
Oh, how good. So it wouldn't be like, on looks or...
Not so
or like,
much.
oh, you're the only girl, and then it would be all. I don't know. Maybe it's because we're a bit older now. I guess maybe we would see that more often in like kinder or like grade 6. But it's not as cool anymore to be like 18 plus, and you're like 5 guys picking up on a girl like, oh, you're the only girl. It's I don't know. I think there are other things you can do to be a bit more productive. So.
Yeah.
By the way, thank you, classmates. Thank you, friends. That's good. I think this is a good example of what, people should be doing, right? Not just pushing on anyone just for being different.
Yep.
But I have to ask you, this is a little bit different. So I'm going to go a bit off topic. Thinking of, for example, just to give you an example of feeling different. I remember like the last time I took the Japanese proficiency test, I was like, similar to what you said, maybe there would have been in the whole room out of like, let's say, 50 people, maybe 5% or less were non-Asians. So a part of me was like, I don't want to say that I told myself like I don't belong here, but I was like, whoa, am I in the right place type of thing? Or because a part of me is like, I was almost like second guessing myself as in, do I know Japanese or like, should I be here type of thing? So I'm just wondering, but then obviously a part of me is like, hey, focus on the exam. Just, you came to do the test, just focus on that, blah, blah, blah. But I did find that interesting. So I'm just wondering, did you ever, and touching up on that, I haven't had any, like you said, similar to your experience, no discrimination. Everyone was just like, oh, Emilio-san, blah, 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 very nice to me. It's, I guess, just a personal thing. Have you ever experienced something like that? Or have you, told yourself that?
Not really, but sometimes when you are in a room full of the opposite gender, it does feel a bit different, I would say. And most of the time, I don't really realize it, but in some moments when I do, there's a slight part of me that becomes a bit scared.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure how to describe this feeling of fear, but sometimes I do get that, but majority of the time I do not.
Which is good.
Yeah.
I guess it might be different if you've got like more girls in the room.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And wow, when it comes to becoming a pilot, right? You mentioned having a few certifications. Can you tell us a bit about how has the process been for you?
Okay. So I'm saying it for Australia, but in Australia, if you wanted to get a pilot's license, you basically get 3 basic stages of license. Because some people, they also want to do it just for fun. So if the first stage, we have the recreational. That one, there's less limitations on it. And pretty much majority of the people can go and get that if they wanted to. And then the second one would be a private pilot's license. That one is just recreational, and plus on top of that, you can do a bit more things, and there's less restrictions on what you can do. And then lastly is the commercial pilot's license. So if you are going to work as a pilot anywhere in the industry, you would need to have a basic license of a commercial pilot's license. And then on top of that, because there's different variations of aircraft, sometimes if you're going to fly a different aircraft, then you also have to get different certifications so that you're qualified and you know enough to fly that specific type of aeroplane. So what you need to get does depend on where you want to be eventually. But for most people, the first stage would be to get your commercial pilot's license.
And then from then, again, I'm relating this to medicine, but it's almost like you become a doctor, you become a GP, and then from then you can branch out.
Yeah.
So it's like you get your commercial license, and then you say, I want to be a helicopter pilot. And I guess you get that license. Or, I'm putting myself on the spot. I don't know too many names of aircrafts. But again, I guess you would do that, right?
Similar. But just to clarify, with the helicopter, they actually get their own commercial license, because usually with the basic license, you have the aeroplane ones and then you have the helicopter ones. But once you get the basic license, you can go and branch out and like go and learn about the different types of airplanes.
Wow, this sounds, it's interesting because as we go, it's like, oh my God, it gets more and more complicated.
It's a bit confusing sometimes.
Wait, so since you have completed your test, is this the test for the commercial license?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, wow. Okay. So now I guess you might be at the stage of deciding what to do next.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, cool.
Kind of. So when I got into the industry, the corporate private jets always really excited me as compared to the airline jets. So that is the direction that I want to go into. But it is quite a niche market, and especially for Australia, there's much less people doing it compared to like some place like America, where there's a lot more like private jets.
Well, true. Also, I guess, the US is very big, lots of businesses. And then it's like, oh, I need to go to, I don't know. I imagine someone being in New York, like I got to go to Chicago for a meeting, leaving in 2 hours. And then, boom, you just go type of thing.
That's right.
Interesting. And just touching up on something that I guess people may want to ask.
Yeah.
So assuming that a person wants to say, I want to be a pilot in like Qantas or equivalent, like in Australia, I would say Qantas is by far like the top airline, right? It's like Qantas Virgin or Virgin Australia. But to do that, to get to that point, it would be from becoming a commercial pilot.
Yep.
And then do you need to do anything else? Or technically speaking, you could start applying to be a pilot in Qantas or any other airline?
Well, technically, yes. But most of the times, the airline jobs, they do require a lot more experience and certifications. So, for example, I don't want to confuse anyone, but with the commercial basic license that you get, that one, usually we train in the small aircrafts. They have only one engine. And then the next stage would be something like training to fly a multi-engine aircraft. And then there's also other things that you can add on top. But usually once you have those basic certifications, you also need to have experience. Most of the time, when people are just starting out in aviation, it's very hard to get your first job because everyone wants experience. I don't know if other people also feel this way, but when you are like 14, 15 years old, you are on seek.com and you're trying to look for a job. And all the job descriptions, they say they want someone with X amount of experience, but you're like, I don't have any experience. How do I get that kind of experience? That's kind of what it's like in aviation, where your first job is very hard to get. But once you build that experience, it becomes easier to get your next job. But to go back to your question, how to become a pilot in something like Qantas, that would be to get your basic licenses and then to find, probably best way is to find a job to gain flight experience first and then go and see what the requirements are during the time for Qantas and then go from there.
You touched on a funny pain point that I think, I mean, it's not only for aviation, it's like you finish university, you get your degree, you are whatever you studied, engineer, you're an accountant, you're a pilot, I don't know, you're an artist, whatever it may be. And then it's like, okay, junior position, fresh and graduate, 5 years experience. And it's like, my degree was 3 years, my degree was 4. How can I have more, and then it's like that, I guess, spiral of finding experience, but then you need experience to get experience.
Yep.
Tricky.
Definitely.
So I think lots of listeners are like, I totally feel it. And that happened to me too, like applying for jobs. I would go and it's like, okay, how much experience do you have? And I'm like, well, I just finished university. I mean, sorry, I don't have an internship, and I'm an international student, so I'm sure you guys know what I mean. And another thing that you mentioned was, building that experience. So for pilots out there, quick paraphrase, start building up any flight experience, ideally getting multi-engine aircraft. I feel like I gotta be careful, not to mess anything up.
It's okay. I will help to correct you.
Exactly. Thank you. And then once you get that multi-engine aircraft practice experience, you basically build your skills up a bit. Then you could apply or like also check, because maybe they may want extra training or. This reminded me of like, what was the name, like the Formula One. So it's almost like as in your commercial license is Formula One, so you know how to be on the race. But then if you want to continue, maybe you need now a license not for Formula One, but imagine like Formula One for SUVs, for like bigger cars.
Kind of like that. Yeah, it's like, say you're driving. When you go and do a drive test, it's probably in a small car. But if you wanted to now go and drive a truck, you have to now go and get a truck license. Or
Exactly.
if you wanted to drive manual, you have to go and get a manual license, something like that.
Okay, there we go. So I hope you're taking notes, future pilot out there. You also mentioned starting out. Something that I have been asking people that, always come to the podcast is, how was it in terms of like family? Like the feedback from family when you say, hey, I want to be a pilot. I remember when I was a teenager, I said one time to my mom, like, hey, mom, I want to be a psychologist. And my mom was like, OMG, one of my kids is crazy. And, that's also a whole nother topic. But I'm just wondering, how was it in your case when you eventually told family, friends, let's say your inner circle? How was it? Did you just tell them? How did they take it well? Did you have much support? Can you tell us a bit about how that was? How did you navigate that?
So in terms of my family, when I first spoke about it to my mom, she was like, she couldn't understand it. She just kept asking me like, why? Like, why do you want to do that? Because she thinks that it's a very dangerous job. I think because aviation accidents do happen, and I know that when they do happen, it's quite scary. And it looks quite horrifying. And I think most people have that kind of image in their mind. They think that when something happens, it's going to be like that. But the chances of those kind of accidents happening is actually very faint. And we do our training based on those kind of scenarios. So when things do go down, most of the time people know what to do. So I kind of helped my mom to reassure her that. And over time, she's kind of like accepted that. And now she's very happy for me. And you remember San? You might have met her last week at...
Oh, yeah.
She's my childhood friend. I've known her for probably about, I'd say 10 or more years now. I was just having a conversation with her the other day, and she was telling me that she still remembers me telling her that I wanted to become a pilot, probably when we were in like high school or primary school, when we were still like kids. And she said that it was really amazing for her to see me have achieved this now. And she kept thinking back to the moment when I told her, and she was just like, wow, like, is that gonna happen? Like, she was always very excited about it for me, which, thank you, San.
Shout out to you. Boom. Nice. So it sounds like you've had a bit of support, and I guess like maybe it's happened to everyone out here. There might be a bit of rejection, but it wasn't like, oh, no, don't be a pilot or blah, blah, blah. Don't talk to me. So it's good that your mom eventually... Did you take her on a test ride or something? So that
Yes, because it was her birthday 2 days ago, I think.
Oh, happy birthday, Mom.
Thank you. I took her on a flight with my little sister, who is 10 years younger than me. And actually, I recorded a bit of the flight. And when I look back at the footage, it was quite funny, actually, because my mom was a bit scared. Because the day that we went out, it was quite turbulent. And because of the aircraft was quite small, any kind of like movement, you could feel it. And when I look back at the footage, she was like actually clenching onto her seatbelt very tight. And whenever I looked to the side, she would just be like stuck into her seat like this.
Oh, yeah.
But overall, she really enjoyed it, and she thought it was really good that she was able to see what I do, and I'm able to take her on a flight to take her have a look at Melbourne City.
That's crazy cool. How did you feel when that happened? Because, I mean, I guess flying is like one level of, self-realization, but what about sharing that with your loved ones?
I think it's definitely weird. Because usually when you do your training, you're either by yourself or you're with an instructor. And usually under those environments, you tend to be quite stressed because you have to think about what the instructor is going to tell you to do, or like what's coming up next. Whereas when you have someone next to you, I'm kind of like more so worrying about how they feel. I'm worried if what I'm doing is not going to make them, or like what I'm doing is going to make them feel sick or anything like that, or if they feel worried or scared or anything. So I kept having to look aside to look at my mom to see how she's doing. But it's definitely an experience to be on a flight with your friends or your family.
How cool. I mean, I guess like the closest I could get to this is whenever like I show students, or like whenever I show people Australia, or for that matter Japan, because it's like it's it's been quite a journey to say that I'm close to becoming Aussie. But then basically sharing that with others, because it's not anymore about you. I guess with flying maybe in that case it's similar in that sense, that it's not only like, let's say, your joy, it's like you're sharing that with other people. But then of course when it gets into work and other things, it's a bit different. But with family, how cool. Now, another thing that you mentioned was being aware of others. So I guess that's always like a constant stress that you may have, right?
That's correct. Because like I said before, when you're doing your training, you're kind of like just thinking about how you feel or with the instructor. But when you have a passenger, especially for someone who hasn't been in this sort of aeroplane before, they don't know what to expect. They don't know what to do if something happens. So you kind of like have to like help them understand what's going on, like be sure to like brief them and help them know what to do if something happens.
And I guess you have to be really calm. This reminds me, I'll take you back, you guys, all of you, when I was training and doing triathlons. On my second swim in the ocean, or let's say in the water, right? I would have been around Elwood, I think, or St Kilda. I was just swimming with one of the coaches at the time. And then the coach was super casual. Like we would have been, I don't know, like 800 meters, 1 kilometer away from the shore, and it's like, oh, Emilio, just keep going. Someone is drowning. I need to save that person. And I'm like, whoa, okay. So I guess for you, it's like, dear passengers, the plane is dropping, but please don't start screaming. Don't worry, it's gonna be okay. Or like, I guess dealing with people in that type of environment, like that accident environment, that must be really scary. Have you ever like felt scared, or like going, whoa, this, I mean, could have gone bad, that type of thing? Or luckily, no?
It does happen. And I think you do need to experience those moments so then you know what to do when things do happen.
Oh, wow.
But something that you said earlier about giving those passenger briefs, I think it's very funny, but whenever we do our training for emergency flights, because we've done it so frequently, when we give those passenger briefs, we begin to sound very like monotone and like so calm that it doesn't even sound like something bad is happening.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think a good point. I don't know if I told you this, but anyways, if I did, I'll tell you again. It's good for the show. One time when I was going to Japan, I remember that we stopped in Taiwan, and first, they said the announcement in Chinese, and, my Chinese is not that good. So I was like, oh my God, what's that? But then the English translation really got me scared, because they said something like, dear passengers, we have a strong wind. And I'm like, oh, okay, strong wind. That doesn't sound very good. That must be turbulence. And then, funny enough, there was a bit of turbulence. Yes, that can be, quite scary. And true, maybe staying monotone could be, I guess it's tricky, because you are so used to it, and it's like, oh, nothing's happening, turbulence, and then maybe the whole plane is, everyone is like in the middle of a heart attack, and you're like, oh, no worries, it's gonna be okay, it's just one more minute. I guess the closest I can relate to what you just said is whenever we hear the alarms, or maybe like we hear an alarm. Let's say, for example, right now we're recording and we start hearing an alarm. Assuming that I'm in class, I would tell the students like, oh guys, it's not in this building, don't worry. If it is in this building, we all die together, no stress. And then they're like, oh my God. I'm like, no, I'm joking. Or sometimes it's like, we have an alarm, let's go. And then it's like, oh, but don't get your things, let's go, hurry up. And then, nothing, thanks God, Buddha, Allah, the stars, karma, whatever you believe in, the universe, nothing has happened. And in your case, it's good that you've had some of those scary experiences. Not to the point where, you come and tell us, but I mean, I guess it's good to, know what to do.
Yeah.
Because people do get scared. Another thing that I wanted to mention is with accidents. Do you tell yourself anything? Because one thing that at least, I'm not a pilot, right? And my brother gave me a voucher to fly on a helicopter a year and a half ago. The voucher had 3 years expiry date. And I tried to check in actually twice. And the first time I checked, it was like, helicopter crash, North Geelong. I was like, okay, I'm not going. Screw that. And then my brother's like, hey, when are you booking the flight? Oh, I'm not too sure, bro. I'm not too sure. And then eventually, or like the last 2 or 3 weeks ago, I said, yeah, let me book it. And then it was like, North Queensland helicopter crash. And I'm like, wow. And my brother's like, did you like the present? Look, I did like it. I just don't want to die, Funny enough, then, I booked it. Everything went well, but it's tricky, I mean, especially like for a passenger. Is there anything you tell yourself? Because even though there is such a low probability, I mean, maybe it is still something that people think,
Well, for myself, I've never really thought about it. It's not something that really worry or stress me. Maybe it's also because we do spend a lot of time doing trainings on those emergency times, like because when something does happen, we know immediately what's step 1, step 2, step 3, and if it doesn't work, plan B or plan C. So I think having that kind of training, it kind of like gives me trust that if something was to go down, I'll be okay. Now
that you said that, I'll tell you a joke that I say to friends, everyone. It's like, or I think I heard this in some South American country, but it goes like this: everyone is an atheist until the plane starts to go down. So when you said like I have my protocol, when you said step 1, step 2, step 3, and plan B, what I heard was start praying, pray more, pray so that it's not too painful, and then your plan B is like do your second round of prayers, and then just hope for the best, because it can be, I don't know, it can be scary. But I mean, looking at the bright side, if there is an accident, there is also a chance of surviving, so it's not all dire and interesting. Another thing that I wanted to ask you is the feeling of flying, because maybe some people think I would like to become a pilot because it is cool. I want people to call me captain, just like other people want to be called chef or, I don't know, teacher or engineer or whatever. I'm just wondering, how does it feel? Or on a regular, let's say on a regular flight?
It's a good question, actually. I don't really know how to answer, but you said you did your first helicopter flight the other day. How did you feel when you got into the air in that small aircraft?
Look, a part of me was like, I just hope we don't die. But putting the pessimistic Emilio on the side, I was like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, I mean, I don't know if this is because I like cycling so much, but I had that sense of being free. And it's interesting because on a bicycle, you are not free as you would be on an airplane or on a helicopter in this case. But I felt like, wow, we could go anywhere. Because, for example, if you're driving or if you're cycling, right, there are parts or places where you don't go. Whereas when you're on the air, it's like, wow. It reminds me, I mean, as I'm telling you this, it reminds me like of superheroes like Iron Man, Superman, and it's like when you hear the phrase, the sky's the limit, it's like you could go anywhere. Obviously, you cannot technically go anywhere because I guess with every aircraft or with every, flight, you have like certain limits or like places where you can or can't go.
That's correct.
But at the same time, it's like, I could go anywhere. Or like you could do certain, let's say, things that you cannot do when you are driving or like you're cycling for that matter. So yes, I think like that sense of being free, maybe.
I can agree with that. And I think personally for me, thinking back to my first flight, which was probably about 2 years ago when I first began my training, I don't remember too much about the actual flight itself, but I remember the feeling. And for me, it was just 200% excitement. That was all I could feel, just excitement. Because I've had a passion in aviation for many years. And I've always just really, really wanted to be at the airport and be around aircraft. So all I could feel at the time was just excitement. And I think the second when we took off, it was just like, wow.
I get a feeling, look, I'm going to go with a bold prediction. I think that all you guys that are in aviation or all pilots, you must love a pinch of adrenaline, It's like maybe that feeling when you're going down a roller coaster and your stomach goes like empty for a second. I think you guys must like that. Do you ever have like that feeling, I don't know, or something similar to that?
Not so much, but aerobatic flights? The ones where they do like barrel rolls and like go up and down, sideways, like those. We have had that training in part of the process. And personally, I'm not a big fan. I don't really like being upside down. But you do get that kind of like sinking feeling.
Oh, wow. That's, very, very interesting. Maybe like you almost get addicted, quote unquote, to that feeling. I mean, I don't know, as I'm telling you this, I just remember like, for example, going, skydiving. I was like, maybe a similar feeling with skydiving. I think lots of people get scared first.
Yep.
Have you ever skydived before?
No, I have not, but I do really want to.
Oh, please do so. That's and that's your homework. Go skydiving. Mini spoiler, one time my wife said to me, oh, what's my birthday present? And I said, it's a surprise. And then she said, no, come on, give me a hint. And I said, well, okay, cool. It's something you've never done before. And then she just looks at me dead in the eye and says, skydiving? And I swear to all of you, I was like, I'm so proud of you. How did you guess? And then she's like, no, stop. And I'm like, stop what? How did you guess that? And I was like, this is unreal. This is amazing. on your first go. And then she's like, no, 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 Ale, stop, stop. And I'm like, what do you mean stop? And she goes, I'm not jumping. And I'm like, honey, yes, you are. That's your present. Happy birthday. Really good guess. And she's like, I'm not jumping. Please change it. Show me proof. And I checked, and then it said, Dear Emilio, you are jumping on her birthday. And then she's like, well, it's going to be okay because at least I'm going to jump with you, right? And I was like, no, this is not a cheap present. You're going on your own. But I'll drive you there. So then she's like, what if I die? Don't worry, you will not die. It's going to be okay. And then she loved it, for like the ride. It's like, oh my God, what if something happens? I'm like, look, it's going to be fine. They just open the door and you just... I just told her my plan. If anything bad's going to happen, just start praying. Just start praying, and I'll pray as well. And, But then, funny enough, after skydiving, she was just like, I love it. This was so cool. I want to do it again. So maybe I get a feeling that maybe with pilots it's the same. Like maybe there might be some nerves or some chills, but then after the experience, you want to keep doing it.
Possibly, but I've never thought about it that way. Maybe I should ask my fellow pilot friends if they also have that kind of like, if they feel like they have that addicted to that kind of like little bit of adrenaline hit.
Nice. In your journey, because again, being a pilot sounds like, or well, as you were saying, like there are lots of like steps into getting different licenses. There is obviously, I guess, lots of study involved. Is there anything, were you at a point where you like doubted yourself, or like you thought, damn, this is really hard, and then you had like that self or like that own talk, and then you pushed through?
Actually, all the time. And I think it's a very common thing in the pathway. For example, one of your first very big milestone is to be able to fly by yourself, to have that solo experience. And I often think that if you can get past that milestone, you can get through anything else along the pathway. And for me, I actually struggled quite a bit initially. And I kind of like had to take a bit of time to understand what it is that I'm not doing well on, and then try to figure out specific ways to help me work on that.
Okay, well, but again, kudos for pushing through. Random question. When it comes to becoming a pilot in Australia, have you met any international students? Because I've had some students in class telling me like, hey, I want to become a pilot, but I don't know, that is more for studying aviation in uni. What about becoming a pilot? Are there any, or is it more like, let's say, local students dominated?
I would say with the institution that I was at, it's very local students dominated, but there are definitely still a lot of international students, but it does come at a higher cost, which I think is probably the same for many other courses within Australia if you're going to come and study as an international student, but definitely possible.
Okay, there you go. So if you're thinking of becoming a pilot, there you go. I guess, it depends on the permanent visa pathways and all that. But do you think it would be possible to like be doing a degree and then doing that pilot training on the side, like maybe part-time or even like a double degree? Or would that be like a bit too much?
Definitely possible, but I think if you're an international student, might be a bit harder. Just because with the pilot training, you're going to need a lot of time and energy dedicated to it. So usually most people tend to do it full-time. It's going to take a very long time if you were going to do something like that part-time.
Nice. And all right, look, that's good news that there is hope. And as you know, some people listening to the podcast are either thinking of coming to Australia, maybe they are in Australia, and well, maybe some of them want to know or become a pilot. Yeah. Any advice you would give someone thinking of, let's say for now, becoming a pilot?
I think doing a lot of research and knowing what you want out of it. But one of the other really important thing is to check your medical, because becoming a pilot, one of the most important thing is to be physically fit enough for the standards to become a pilot. So actually, I know a lot of people who get cut off at the point of their medical and they cannot physically continue the rest of their journey, which is quite unfortunate and sad. And I do know a lot of friends who have had to go through that. So if you're thinking of going on the pilot pathway, I would suggest to go and look up for the medical certificate and how you can get it and go and do a test. It's going to be quite costly, but I think it's good to have that reassurance and know that this is something that you can do.
Say, for example, again, you are with someone who has no idea about all this, but I'm just wondering, what could be like a medical hurdle that may stop you? I guess maybe something to do with your eyesight, right?
Yeah.
Or is there, I don't know if there is anything else, because as soon as you were saying that, I imagined like me saying I want to be a policeman, or I want to work in the army, or I want to become a lifeguard, and I guess you have to, like, let's say, run at a certain speed or do X amount of push-ups, and if you don't do them, how would it be in terms of being a pilot?
I think it will more so be with like things like if you have color blindness, if you can't differentiate between certain colors, or if you have a family history of certain health issues, things like that, or if you've had to take specific medications previously, all of those things can affect your medical.
Interesting. One time, mini break. One time, I was, in the school printing a few things, and the printer was red, so there was a problem, right? And a teacher next to me, I was the new teacher in the school, so I thought this guy was teaching me, and he was like, "Is the printer working?" And I was like, "Bro, come on, it's red." And then he's like, "I'm colorblind," and I felt so bad, and I was like, but me being Emilio, I'm like, wait. And I like started pointing at different colors, like, wait. What's this? What's this?
God.
Yeah, being too Latino, I'm like, I'm not sure if, maybe he could have been, I don't know how colorblind he is. And he's like, yeah, look, my biggest colorblindness is with like red and green and red. Everything else, I can like second guess it. And then I was like, I'm so sorry. I went from like super Latino, like, what's this? And then I went super Japanese. I'm sorry. So interesting. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, because I guess if you're colorblind, maybe like say if you are when you're landing, if you cannot see the color, or
that's correct. Yeah.
Oh wow, how interesting. Well, hopefully, technology keeps improving to the point where there might be something that can be done for those people. And Angela, another thing, I'm gonna bring this up because I think it will be good for our listeners to know. I always like to ask our guests, where possible, a few, let's say, advice in terms of like integrating in Australia, or like meeting locals, or improving their English. Being someone who's been here, I would say, most of your life or all your life, what advice would you give to someone starting fresh or thinking of coming here, maybe someone who wants to make more Aussie friends? What would you recommend?
Good question. Well, personally, I've kind of been in a similar position where although I've lived in Melbourne most of my life, there was a stage of my time when I wanted to just go out and meet people. And what I did during that time is to think of what my interests were and then start from there. So there's this app called Meetup. I'm not sure if you've heard of it before, but it's quite widely used within Melbourne, at least. And on the app, you can look for areas of your interest and then attend events. And I think it's easier to make friends when you have a similar area of interest, and then you can start branching out from there and see where you can find like-minded people.
Nice. I think that's a very good way to connect, because from, like you said, from your interest, lots of things can come up.
Yep.
Funny enough, this happened because of our interest of studying Japanese or of visiting Japan. So there you go. Good example on the spot. And funny enough, the next guest, I also met that person through an interest. But to make it, to leave a bit of suspense on the table. Yeah, like, oh, who is the next guest? I'll let you think about it. Angela, look, it's almost time to wrap up. We could keep going. We need to have a part 2, but I'm just putting the spotlight on you again. So we've talked about a lot of different things, and I always like to finish the podcast with a finishing message. So what would be your final message to our listeners? Anything that you would like to say, share? The spotlight is on you.
Okay. I think what I would say is if there is something that you want to do right now, go and do it. This is your sign. Go and do it.
Oh, there we go. I need to make a clip of that because lots of people will be like, yes, there we go. This is my sign.
This is your sign.
Exactly. From live, universe, social media, whatever it might be. Awesome. Look, Angela, amazing episode. Thank you so much for joining us. This was episode 100 of the Teacher Emilio podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in here on YouTube. And for those on Spotify, thank you so much for joining. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And I'm very happy because, we were part of your day. You were part of our day. And miss me. Don't miss me too much. I'll see you next week on the next episode. And I'll probably see you in a few weeks or maybe in a few months. We can do a part 2 or maybe touch up on another topic.
Let's do it.
Angela, thank you so much for coming. I had a blast. I hope that you did too. And well, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care and bye for now.